What do you get when you combine a giant dust storm with heavy Thanksgiving traffic? Let's see. You get a lot of people freaking out that they may not get that perfect spot in line for Black Friday sales? Not this time. The correct answer is one of the worst traffic incidents in California and actually U.S. history. Hi, I'm Chris May, host of This Day in Weather History, a podcast from the Weather Network in Canada. The multi-car mess on the I-5 in 1991 was caused by the poor visibility that was caused in itself by a large dust storm. It was an otherwise nice sunny day in central California when a sudden blinding dust storm trapped hundreds of holiday motorists on the highway in the San Joaquin Valley on Black Friday, this day in weather history. Not one person in this carnage cared one bit about the best price of the year on a big screen television. It was a Black Friday, that much is true. This disaster left 17 people dead, involved 104 vehicles, and injured another 150 people in a series of chain reaction accidents. The California Highway Patrol, who tended to this, said at least 93 cars and 11 transport trucks crashed into each other in the middle of the afternoon along a very tiny stretch, only 1.5 miles, of this Interstate number 5. The fatal string of collisions began when a blinding dust storm cut visibility to almost zero. There were at least 4 separate multiple-car pileups in this one event, one involving about 30 vehicles alone. Police on scene commented that some of the transport trucks were caught so off guard by how immediate the visibility was cut off that their momentum took them into stopped traffic at 50 miles per hour. That's 80 kilometers per hour. We always know to slow down in bad conditions, but just like how whiteouts and snow creep up and surprise a population on a highway, this was the exact same case here, but with sand. Survivors of the disaster described several thick clouds of dust sweeping across the highway, almost like waves, almost like something you've seen in movies depicting scenes on other planets, like Mars. One driver said that all of a sudden, everything was blacked out. So you can see how impossible the situation was for everyone. The waves is what made it so critical. After one wave of heavy sand, there would be the realization in the brief clearing that massive vehicles were about to be run into, or they were going to run into you and run into everything they did. One driver recounted how his car slammed into the rear left tires of an 18-wheeler. At the same time, another truck slammed into the right tires, and sadly, that killed that driver. Seconds later, it was said that car after car crashed into the rear of their vehicle, pinning it against the transport and leaving this person's family crushed with his wife in the passenger seat and 2 children in the back. It was a total nightmare. Witnesses that were there, along with state police attending, described the scene that looked more like a zombie apocalypse movie than anything else. When it was cleared, there were dozens of cars, all piled up on each other, some on fire still, along with trailers and smashed trucks scattered along the freeway concrete. There were survivors climbing slowly from their cars, covered in a combination of blood and sand. A Mr. Richard Brucker, 68-year-old guy who was on his way home with his wife Marjorie after spending Thanksgiving in Palm Springs, said, and I quote, "We passed all kinds of terrible scenes. Trucks on fire, cars on fire, bodies in the road. It looked like war, and I've been in the war." He said that almost immediately after his car stopped, it was struck 3 times by everything coming up from behind them. But that wasn't the most terrifying part. When he looked up at this moment, all he saw was a semi heading for him and other stalled cars. Miraculously, at the last moment, the trucker veered off into a ditch, wrecking his vehicle, but avoiding the cars that would most certainly have been annihilated in his path, he said. One family in the tangled mess found their 8-year-old son unconscious in the back seat after the crashing had finally stopped. Frantically, the couple and their daughter crawled out a window in the car. It was the only escape route. They pulled their son out the same window, and he regained consciousness minutes later. But when they were able to take account of just what in the world happened, they saw other motorists crushed in their cars. Passing a tangle of 6 engulfed in flames, they spotted a man in a delirious state of shock wandering around on his own. He'd escaped from the flames but kept muttering unconsciously that he needed to retrieve his briefcase. He was taken to a nearby emergency crew for observation. Emergency personnel spent hours sifting through flattened and charred vehicles, searching for victims. After the pileups, the California Highway Patrol closed 150 miles. That's 240 kilometers of the heavily traveled roadway, and it would remain closed overnight. The dust storm that disabled one of the busiest freeways in the United States happened this day in weather history. Tomorrow, we come to the end of another month of TDIWH with a story so shocking, so improbable, that I could not resist bringing it to my calendar crowd. Many of us have never even seen a shooting star, which is actually just a meteorite sailing and burning through our atmosphere. But what about the odds of actually being hit by one? Sounds like I'm making it up, right? It's a true story. Tomorrow, on This Day in Weather History, with me, your host, Chris May.